Hello and welcome to Living the Dream for General Practitioners, the podcast for doctors and clinic leaders who want to learn about pathways, strategies and opportunities for living and working in Australia. Join me, Gemma Gough, and my expert guests as we share stories, unlock the secrets to recruitment success, share tips for moving across the world, navigating new cultures and so much more. This show is brought to you by Health Recruitment Australia. Now sit back, relax and enjoy this episode. Hello everyone and welcome back. Today I am joined by Dr. Matthew Parker, who migrated to Adelaide with his family in 2023 from the UK, where he was working as a GP for almost 20 years. I invited Matt to join us today so we can talk about GP burnout, how this is affecting general practitioners, particularly overseas, and how Matt feels about his work-life balance now versus when he was living overseas, and has the transition been a healthy one in terms of his new lifestyle. Matt, welcome and thanks for joining me today. I guess the logical place to start would be to ask why you became a doctor.
Well, I suppose my dad worked as a pharmacist, so I was around the medical profession from quite a young age, and then at school, I had friends whose sort of parents were doctors, so I did some work experience sort of towards the end of my school time, and just, you know, the interest developed from there, really.
Okay, so you must have seen many changes within the industry during your 20 years of consulting in the UK. What sort of were those main changes, do you think?
I think because I've worked as a GP for such a long period of time, I've seen the best and the worst of general practice, really. So I think when I first started working, obviously as a GP trainee, sort of working in a sort of supported environment, and then going on to be a salaried GP, and I then moved on to be a partner and took on more responsibility. And I think, you know, early on and through the middle part of my career, it was a very enjoyable place to be. There was a very supportive team around us. We all kind of worked together collectively for the good of the patients, and there was a lot of job satisfaction. And I couldn't ever envisage sort of working anywhere else, but unfortunately, sort of pre-COVID, the cracks began to appear, and post-COVID, those cracks just became larger and larger, and the job satisfaction was sort of ebbing away. My ability to sort of serve the patients that I'd been seeing for 20 odd years became more and more challenging, and it felt the right time to look at my work-life balance and, think whether there was an alternative, really.
Yeah, sure. So would it be fair to say that there is an expectation perhaps that you become a GP partner when you sort of study medicine? Is that always sort of the long-term goal? So did you feel that you needed to step into that realm, or would you have been quite happy being the a salaried GP without sort of the partnership expectations or those pressures?
I think at the time when I joined general practice, partnership was the natural progression, really. So I went from GP training to a salaried position in one practice, and then within 2 or 3 years, a partnership opportunity became available, and I became a partner and stayed within that role. And obviously, you accept that there are pluses and minuses of being a partner. Obviously, the more responsibility comes, but you also get the ability to, decide on the direction of travel with the practice as well, which again can be quite rewarding. But as I said, when the workload was becoming impossible to manage, I stepped down as a partner and returned to where I had been before as a salaried GP, and I did that for a couple of years before making this move.
And do you think it's underestimated, the pressures of being in the partnership. You consult patients 8 till 5, and then you spend your evenings doing paperwork and weekends, taking calls and doing more paperwork. Do you think there is an element of sort of underestimating, the expectations of partnership?
I think as a salaried GP, you don't realise the extra roles and responsibilities that you have as a partner. So as a partner, we had an experienced practice manager to help, but as a partner, you do become involved in the recruitment, the hiring, unfortunately, sometimes the firing of staff. You've got to consider the kind of financial aspects of, what is affordable, what isn't affordable. You've got to manage, with regard to the sickness of staff members. And increasingly, over the last few years, GP recruitment was more and more difficult. Probably in the couple of years before the pandemic, you were struggling to fill sort of salaried GP roles. A higher proportion of GPs coming out of training were taking the opportunity to locum, and you couldn't really blame them for doing that. Really, obviously that has a knock-on effect on everybody's workload within the practice, because locums won't do the sort of extra sort of paperwork, pathology, and all the other things that come with that role, really.
For sure. And that sort of extra pressure is unsustainable. And we get to, a situation where it's becoming dangerous, really, isn't it? Working in those conditions long term.
Yeah. And I think, obviously, the unmet demand that came through the pandemic sort of magnified the sort of staffing and retention and recruitment issues that were going on sort of pre-pandemic, really. And the only way to manage demand was to do more remote consulting. And I felt, towards the end of my time in the UK, it was becoming increasingly dangerous to do that. We were cutting corners to get just to manage the numbers that we're having to deal with on a daily basis.
Sure. So what would a typical sort of week look like for you? Did you feel then, I'm guessing not, that you had the right sort of work-life balance? What does Monday to Sunday look like for you back in the UK?
So I would tend to wake up at 6 o'clock if I hadn't already woken up. I would leave the house at 6:30. I'd get to work around about 7 to 15:15. I would spend the next hour and 15 minutes filing pathology, doing referrals, dealing with insurance reports, sort of preparing for the day. 8:30 phones would go on. I would work between 8:30 and 12 o'clock seeing patients. Pre-pandemic, that would be face-to-face, sort of 15, 10-minute appointments. Sort of post-pandemic, it was a mixture of face-to-face and telephones. And then between 12 and 2, it would be home visits. And then from 2 till 3:30, it would be again more sort of paperwork, insurance, referrals, etc. 3:30 to 6 o'clock, another 15, 10-minute appointments. And then wrapping up from 6 o'clock, rest of paperwork, probably leaving around about 6:30 to 7 o'clock, getting home between sort of 7 and 7:30, occasionally needing to log back in at home to clear what I had day, and then logging in on a day off to kind of also get stuff done, and occasionally having to kind of log in at weekends to keep on top of it as well. So that was a typical sort of working week.
And what was the sort of the turning point for you? That's sounding like a not particularly healthy work-life balance, and something that would not be sustainable for you. But for you, what was the tipping point that made you think about making that move to Australia?
I think there's a couple of things really. One was my daughter was completing her A-levels, and she was planning to do a gap year, take some time out and do some travelling. And because we have family over in Australia, then Australia was a destination that she was sort of considering. And then secondly, a couple of GPs that I had been the trainer for, who I'd worked with in the practice, also mentioned, they decided that they were going to come and work in Australia and asked me to be a reference. So that sort of started the process of me looking at, what was involved. And then, bizarrely, there was a chance conversation that we were, myself and my wife were in the Lake District, and we were sat at a cafe, and there was an Australian couple in the table opposite who were there on a coach trip, and they were talking about the need for GPs in Australia, and again, that was another kind of thing that made us think, well, why not give it a go, really?
That sounds great. And how did the family feel about that then, when you sort of mentioned to the children and to your wife that, this is, let's seriously look at this? How did they feel about it?
I mean, I think it was the right time for us, because we have an older son who he's kind of sorted out in terms of work and things. So he wasn't planning on coming to Australia. My daughter obviously had intentions to travel, and the rest of the family, I think, had realised that I wasn't getting the same level of enjoyment out of work, that it was beginning to kind of affect my well-being, and supportive that something needed to change, really.
Sure. So you're here, you're settling in. You've joined a very supportive clinic by all accounts. So tell us, what does a typical work week look like for you now?
So basically I'm living local to the practice, so I haven't got the long commute anymore. So I mean, I tend to arrive at the practice sometime between 7:30 and 8:00, just to kind of prepare for the day. But I haven't got that massive wodge of prescriptions to sign, or sort of paperwork to do. I set my first appointment at 8:00 because I definitely am more productive in the morning, really. So I prefer to get going early on. So I work between 8 and 1, 15-minute appointments. I have kind of gaps in between to catch up, but sometimes, I'll fill those with extra patients depending on demand. And then there's a lunch for staff between sort of 1 and 2. We all try and sort of get over to meet up and have a chat. And then from 2:00 onwards, back to 15-minute appointments. And then the kind of timing of when the day ends varies depending on what day of the week it is. So I work a long day on a Monday, an earlier finish on a Tuesday and a Wednesday, kind of standard sort of 6:00 finish on a Thursday, and then Fridays and the weekends up.
Nice. And you have, you're essentially an independent practitioner at the clinic you are now. So I assume that means you have essentially the autonomy to work the hours that you wish to. And if you want to put in a tea break and a longer lunch break, or, have a day off in the week, that you're able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, there's great flexibility in terms of the hours that you want to work. So if you prefer to, work later, start later, work later, have half days, you set the agenda, really. So, whatever works for you, works over here, really.
Excellent. And you say you're living fairly local to the practice, so you're home in good time for family dinners and making the most of your evenings in the Australian summers.
Yeah, I mean, it's lovely that, I can finish work here. So let's say today it will be a 4:30 finish. I'm not having to wait behind to kind of get paperwork and things done. Largely, you're finished and you're out the building, and then back home, and you've got an evening to yourself, really. So yeah, no, the work-life balance is certainly sort of swung in a favourable direction.
That's so great to hear. And the family are happy you've made the move? They're all settling in and finding their feet?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's difficult when you've got family back at home, but through the wonders of modern technology, you can keep up to date with what's going on. And obviously, we've got family planning to come out and see us. So although it's a long journey, it's definitely doable.
Absolutely. So for any GPs that are listening that are considering a move to Australia, what advice would you give them?
I think the main thing is to accept that the process does take time. So there are several sort of hoops that you have to jump through. And I think, seek advice and support from colleagues who may have done it before, or, get an agent to work with you. I mean, we had an agent helping us, and that did make the process a lot easier. You seem to spend a lot of time doing the same thing, providing the same information, so it can get sort of frustrating. But I think as long as for me, I think it took probably around about sort of 15 months from the start of the process to actually physically starting working here. I know it probably can be done more quickly than that now. They've removed a few of the obstacles, but it will still take time.
Absolutely. We've talked in our GP Recruitment Fundamental podcast series about the steps to take for GPs to move to Australia. And unfortunately, many of the bodies don't sort of dovetail. So you're right in that there's a fair bit of duplication, unfortunately. But I think you're evidence that it's worth persevering, and there is light at the end of the tunnel for GPs that are looking to make that move and to regain that work-life balance. And there's just ample opportunity in Australia for GPs to earn a very lucrative living, but also have plenty of time to spend exploring and spending time with friends and family. So yeah, that's it's certainly worth leaning on your recruiter, and as you say, those that have experienced the move themselves. So that's good feedback. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners, Matt, about your move, or anything that you wish you'd have known back then that you know now?
So I think there are obvious differences between the Australian and UK system. So the medicine is largely the same, but there are differences with regard to obviously the billing, but the billing is obviously dealt with at reception, so you're not physically handling any money, which was nice to know. Absolutely, definite relief. And also, some of the rules and regulations around prescribing and sort of, putting the correct sort of codes in for the fees and things does take a little bit of time to get your head around. But, I had a sort of full induction sort of program, and I've got colleagues here who've been through the same process relatively recently, or are still going through the process. So to be able to kind of lean on them for advice and support has been, very, very good.
That's great. That's super. Well, this has all been really helpful, Matt. Thank you so much for your time today. It sounds like the move worked out for you and your family, which I'm so pleased to hear. If anyone listening would like more information about migrating to Australia, we do have our GP Recruitment Fundamental podcast series, which you can catch on any of the platforms. So YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Lots of helpful topics on there about how to move, the step-by-step guide for you, essentially, which can help make your dreams come true. So that's it today, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. We'll speak to you again soon. Thank you for listening to Living the Dream for General Practitioners. Don't forget to subscribe on your favourite podcast player so you don't miss an episode. At Health Recruitment Australia, we want to see more happy GPs, thriving medical practices and healthy communities. If you'd like to join us on our mission, visit healthrecruitmentaustralia.com.au to explore opportunities and get in touch. Thanks for listening.